Hey, alright, I got my foot up on the gas. It's the Joe Q Car Show podcast. Let's go.
Katelyn, welcome to the show. I'm extremely happy to have you on. Katelyn Shelby Davis, who has, we've known each other for a lot of years, has done everything under the sun, from the Make-A-Wish Foundation, corporate communications for automotive suppliers, holds director positions, a fellow podcaster, prolific member of the Detroit automotive community, and making things happen for as long as I can remember, Miss Katelyn Shelby Davis. So happy to have you on.
Thank you. That was an epic intro. Maybe
Oh my gosh.
Maybe one of the best.
I feel like I need to do you justice here because you have so many different perspectives, and I think that's what makes you such a Swiss Army knife, and also like a really sharp one at that when it comes to just anything automotive. And I'm not joking around here. Dear listeners, if you do not know who Katelyn is, you should follow her right now. It's at Katelyn Shelby on Twitter. She has some of the best tweets around when it comes to the automotive industry and what's going on, especially when it comes to the domestic brands here in Detroit. But what I want to ask you is, what are you driving nowadays?
I drive an Edge ST that I absolutely love. I have been a long time Edge driver. This is I think my third or fourth Edge lease. And I was actually going to leave Ford and leave Edge. And then I went and test drove an ST, and I was like, this is cool. I could take this. So that's where I ended up. I knew I couldn't go to something smaller, but this was kind of the best of both worlds for me.
Yeah, you've been in the Ford family for a long time. The Shelby in your middle part of your name is not an accident.
No. For a long time, when I first meet people, a lot of people think that's my last name, but it's not. It's actually my middle name. When I was born, the story is that my dad was about to buy a Shelby Mustang. That is his dream car, always wanted one. To him, that was like the peak, and that's what he wanted. And then my mom kind of ruined all of that when she found out she was pregnant. And so
I think it takes two, by the way.
So instead, I was given that as my middle name. I think ideally they would have had that as my first name, but there was a little bit of drama about, can we really name our kid after a car? So that ended up being my middle name. And I've really run with it. I've always used Katelyn Shelby as my online persona, the thing that I use to represent me, because it really brings that car culture that I've had my whole life into the picture.
I really like when it's when a show host or, somebody embraces their name. It's a beautiful thing.
Yes.
I think though, for as long as I can remember, and we've been friends for a while now, you've just been such a go-getter, and in so many different ways have succeeded in every field you've gone into. What is the secret here?
What's the secret sauce?
Yeah.
The secret, it truly is just passion. I mean, it's not a gimmick for me. It's not the thing that I do to get a one-up on everyone or to leave an impression that this is my life. Like, I am truly passionate about what I do. And it started in just pure automotive. I think, for your listeners, it's important to understand that, my background has been in the automotive industry and not specific to cars, right? And so I've worked on the supplier side, the OEM side, but it's all been at that corporate level. And so when I was in college, and I feel really bad, I had to figure out who this is because I use this example all the time. Someone from one of the big three came and talked at my university, and at the time when I was coming out of school, the big place to go and work was Google. It was right when all that marketing was coming out about their pool tables and the ping pong and the on-site everything, and everyone was just leaving this state to go there. Everyone was just abandoning Michigan and abandoning automotive. it was the recession, and we're all going to go work at Google. And this person said, have you ever really thought about the automotive industry and about cars and what it really means for the world's economy? Like, the automobile is the most high-tech consumer product available. And although everyone wants to go work for Google, quite frankly, you could build something cooler here, meaning Detroit, because at the time that's what they were trying to keep everyone from leaving our region. And I was like, wow, I can do that. Like, I want to do that. I had already grown up with cars and loved being at car shows, and my parents worked in the industry. And so for me, I've always been like emotionally tied to it. And there's a lot of passion that goes behind it.
I think that's the big thing. You started off what you were saying by talking about the passion that has propelled you forward in all these multiple careers. And I think the genuine love for the industry and transportation and moving people around, but also I think you have a really big love for the city too. And that's something that I think you might have a hard time leaving it. What is it about Detroit that keeps you in Detroit or around Detroit?
It's funny because when I went to college, I actually left Southeast Michigan, which is otherwise known as quote unquote Detroit, and I went to the other side of the state. And although I loved going to school up there and I liked my time there, I always knew from like day one that I wouldn't stay here. Like, this wasn't a place for me. And I ultimately, after I graduated, did move back. And I think that so much of the city itself and the region and this revitalization and new birth that we've seen over the last 10 years, it feels so authentic. So much of it has that car culture as part of it. I think when you look at other hubs in the US that have a automotive center of excellence, none of them really have that culture like we do. And that's what I love so much about it. I see so many people, so many of my colleagues and stuff that I see at conferences and at events and everything else. And we have this connection of working in the industry. But I'm also the one on the weekends at the car shows and at the cruises, and like, I love both sides of it. So for me, like, you can't find that anywhere else.
Wow. See, I mean, obviously the Detroit area, we have the Woodward Dream Cruise and multiple other car show events. Do you have one that is your go-to that you look forward to other than Woodward, or is that on your list? What do you look forward to?
Woodward is definitely on my list. A lot of what I've grown up doing has been those old school shows. And so there's even like a big one in Frankenmuth, Michigan, where they close down all the roads, and it's in this cute like Bavarian town, and there's just cars, for miles. I like the traditional stuff. I also like, what's the other one that's at TCF in the winter?
Autorama?
Yeah.
Yes.
I think like in the winter, there's never any car shows. And so I always look forward to it because it's always like super crappy. It's in the winter. I go with my parents, and we just like spend a whole day walking through, talking to people. Yeah, I think that's, being able to talk to people and see old friends. My dad has a lot of friends that, are in the circuits and all that kind of stuff, where we see at car shows. And
do you ever feel like it's kind of a mismatch though? Because I know I've walked through car shows like that, and I feel like, man, it's hard for me to fit in with these. And now, us millennials, we're kind of finding our own. But for so long, it was a very like, what is that brand? Johnny Bahama kind of like, winga dinga cars, and it's the same songs, just in a different location. And I've been to car shows in Pennsylvania that have that same kind of feeling. It's just a bunch of guys with their chest hair showing and their Corvettes and whatever. So like, Do you see that like changing at all, or because that's a really strong crowd still, from what I can gather?
It's such a like weird mix of people, I feel like, and I feel like even like our demographic is even more into like hot rods and like it like more customization, and I don't know, you see both sides, but they don't really mix together either. And so they're like two separate markets that even at a lot of the car shows are on separate ends of the lots. And I would like to see them mixed together a little bit more. One of the other favorite ones that I have, because I am a Mustang person and my family is a Mustang family, is Mustang Memories, which is actually at Ford headquarters, which is exactly what it sounds like. Thousands of Mustangs. It's not so much of like going to see all them as it is of all the people that you meet and you know. And that's one audience that I will say that I feel like the demographics mix a little bit more than I see at other shows.
I do feel like the Mustang, like I think one of the sayings, that one of the marketing jargon things that I heard from Mustangs is like everybody has a Mustang story, right? Like, and that's a really popular one that people like to lean on. But it is true though. It is one of those cars that it defines a brand. It defines more than a brand. It defines a culture, really, the muscle car culture. So I get it. I get why people like Mustangs. I would like to get one day, but we'll see what happens. The thing is, you've bounced around in so many different careers, and I think that it makes you so much stronger than just kind of specializing in one thing and getting stale in one thing. Are you going for all these substantial career moves because it is, why are you doing this?
Yeah, so let me start kind of at the beginning. At the beginning of time, when I graduated from college, I started off at a tier 1 supplier, mainly because it was the recession, and quite honestly, I came home from college and like cold called auto company I could find and like begged for a job, tried to create my own job, and it finally worked, and I created my own job doing social media, which at the time was wildly newfangled and confusing to people.
Isn't that weird?
And so I started off at a tier 1 supplier, and I was there for 3 or 4 years, and I loved it. I was getting to do things that my classmates, who were some of the first people to enter the workforce doing social media with an actual degree that was actually taught social media, I was getting to do much cooler work than most of my former classmates was getting to do. But I was also getting a lot of exposure to industry events and high-level executives and strategic planning. And so I was really finding out how the supplier world works and ultimately what that relationship with the OEM looks like. And after a few years, I had a really, really great boss who understood my need to learn more about the industry. Because like I said earlier on in our conversation, like when I was like tempted with this global industry with the highest tech consumer product, like I was all in. And so the supplier I worked for was global, but also I had a tie to Detroit that I didn't want to cut. She really led me in a way that she quite frankly was like, well, if you want to learn more, you're going to have to leave. Mm-hmm. My recommendation to you, one being an advertising and communications person, like either go to an agency that has more automotive accounts or go to an OEM, because your next step is either needing to have exposure to more automotive companies, or you need to understand the global aspect of vehicle platforms and the supply chain and all of that. So I ended up doing both. I went to an agency that was the agency of record for Ford, and I was embedded on site at Ford doing a lot of communications work. And while I was there for 2 years, I did exactly what I set out to do. I wanted to understand how this works from the inside. I wanted to understand how things were changing. We were at this very early stages of this inflection point of mobility and what it really meant to reinvent transportation beyond ownership of a vehicle. And so I was really starting to understand how this works. I ended up leaving there and going back to a supplier because I wanted to get back in that environment of being a big fish in a small pond again. So I could really have a smaller team and really do meaningful work that was, seen out there in the world. And so I had more control over the end product if I could go back to a smaller company. So I went back to a global tier 1 supplier and spent some time there for a while. And during that time, I was doing a lot of work with an organization that my company was an investor with. And then I ended up joining as the director of that organization, which is Mich Auto. It's a Automotive and Mobility Industry Association for the state of Michigan. So, you and I just talked about how important this area means to me. So now things are really starting to come together. So not only was I still working in automotive, I was representing autos and mobility companies, both highly successful, long established mobility companies, all the way down to startups. And we were doing all of our work around economic development for the Detroit region and for the state of Michigan. So I spent a couple years just diving deep into all of the companies that we have here in Michigan, why this is such a big global hub, and what we can do to ensure that this region stays at the forefront of the industry. Nowhere else in the world will you find the density that we have here between OEMs, suppliers, universities, testing centers, R&D centers. All of that is here, and it's kind of amazing when you take a step back and look at it. So I made a lot of great connections there. We did a lot of work both at the education level and at the policy level. And then, I was just looking for something new and to take kind of a bigger step again. So I joined a PR firm in Detroit called Lambert. It's a nationally ranked top 5 automotive and transportation PR agency. I'm a director there, and I lead a bunch of our automotive and mobility accounts. So again, trying to help automotive and mobility companies make sense of their technology, make sense of their business models, and then translate it in a way that resonates with media, that resonates with consumers, it resonates with other organizations if it's a B2B pitch. So just trying to make this holistic view of what the industry is. And it's interesting that someone like me would end up at a PR firm, because I truly believe that to be able to service my clients well, that you have to have someone with the background and the knowledge base to be able to navigate such a complex industry like this.
Wow. I mean, that's
really
just
long story, but that's where I
huge.
came from and where I am now.
But that's exactly it. It's the path that you took from kind of going supplier side and now being, very much in a communication for the state and for the automotive industry at large. I think it's funny because, I talk to a lot of people, and I think you use the kind of corporate-y talk the most eloquently. So
thank you.
You mesh it in a conversation in a way that's not all ham-fisted, because I know a lot of people will be like, well, let's stick a pin in it and just kind of
circle back to it.
Yeah. So anyway, I just want to commend you on that, because you're very good at it. So when you kind of set out on this career path, is this what you envisioned? Where was the goal, and where did you end up?
So when I was in college, I really, I quote unquote wanted to do social media, and I didn't really have an idea of what that looked like as a career, and I don't really think anyone did. This was before like paid ads and all, like, you know, other than SEO and like paid Google ads. I mean, there wasn't, you know, Twitter was just Twitter, and Facebook, you had to have a .edu email address. So it was very new, but I knew that this was something I could master and I could make my career out of it. Obviously, now being at a PR and communications agency, it is still part of my job, but it's not the main part. But I will say that I truly believe that where I've gotten and all my small steps along the way have all been because I understood the power of social media all these years.
I love harnessing the power of social media. In fact, that's how I get a lot of the interviews for the show here is I'm following somebody and it's so great because you can go approach somebody that you would never actually be able to bump into on the street just because probability, but just like hey, you want to do an interview, or hey, I would like to put this on your site, or hey, you know, just there's a lot of, if you're willing to work social media, it can be such a power for growing your personal network, but and also growing your understanding of the world. It's something that you picked as a career at the exact perfect time. And I can remember trying to make sense of it with you in the early days. And it was just fun because there was so much change and so much happening all at once. And that's kind of stagnated a little bit. You know, you have your big players now. How has that affected you, not having all these small players popping up and leaving? And like, has it made your life easier or harder?
I think in a way it's made it harder. I think, you know, without these like smaller ancillary networks that have popped up over time, it's really led to, you know, a consolidation of these big dogs, and then it all ends up being a pay to play, which as a company is great because you have a marketing budget and all of this, but like as an individual who is trying to do personal branding and just, you know, have a persona to carry through social media, it gets hard. There's so much noise out there, and if you're not paying to play, you have to get creative in how you set yourself up against everyone else.
I mean, you've done a ton of work on your social, on your personal brand. Does it wear you out being a brand?
Yes. I will say that especially recently, especially in quarantine and in the civil unrest that we're currently living through, it has been a lot of work to have a persona and to have a brand that you want to be authentic to, but you also want to contribute constructively to the conversations that you're having. It's also exhausting. You know, in the early days of quarantine, before all the unrest started, you know, I had even just personally taken a couple steps back from social. One, because I can only talk about being inside of my house for so long. And there wasn't any auto news coming out that I could like have some fun with. Like there wasn't really anything. And, you know, and just in living in your house, and I'm sure you know this too, just being here all day, every day was exhausting in itself. And so, you know, I think for the first time ever, I had, you know, made a conscious effort to take a couple steps back for a few weeks. I feel like in the last, you know, week or so, just really emerging back out and picking up steam, but also the industry is picking up steam too, which helps. So I have things to share and to comment on, and yeah, but it's definitely a job. It's like a side hustle almost, but I'm not getting paid, and I don't.
You kind of do get paid though, because you are it's social capital that you're building, right? Like, so the payoff is to have a noteworthy name. Like I have been like, oh yeah, okay, you work for these people, whatever. you know Katelyn Davis? And they're just like, oh yeah, she's great. And it's like, I have a couple of people in my just network of people that I know that I can make a connection with somebody by associating with them. And so like, I have used your name as a name drop at times, and it is truly like amazing to me to have watched this happen. And really, it's just cool. It's really cool because
Thank
I can
you.
remember talking about this stuff, and you know, when we were younger, and it's just, you know, maybe this isn't a victory lap, but I just take a moment to appreciate it, that you have accomplished a lot. So
Thank you.
taking
I
a
mean,
little step
you
back
and you got me into podcasting so
oh
like in early stages of, so like I don't even want to say it was social at that point. I think it was
no.
a few networks existed. I don't even know if Twitter existed when we first started, maybe. And I had
Well,
no idea what I was doing. Just some friends
yeah,
like hanging out and talking, which I guess is podcasting, right? But yeah, I mean, that was so long ago at this point.
it does. It is definitely ancient internet history at this point. But what do you see, like, as far as like the crystal ball, the trends? I mean, everything's kind of consolidating into a few big services. All the doomers, the Gen Z kids are going to be using TikTok. Like,
I joined TikTok in quarantine, by the way.
did it just wear you down, or were you like, I need to do research?
Okay, so one thing I was like, okay, I have all this extra time on my hands because I don't go anywhere and do anything. I'm gonna look at TikTok, and it is wildly interesting, unlike anything I've ever seen before. And for the most part, there isn't a lot of political drama that weighs it down like you see on Facebook and Twitter.
Oof.
During quarantine, I have completely been using it as like an outlet to just like turn off and like try something to get my mind off of what's happening in the world. And I just sit on the couch and scroll and scroll and scroll. But yeah, so I mean, I don't know if I'm bought into it yet. I don't know if it's here to last, but I get it, sort of.
I guess.
But
I mean,
crystal ball. So here's my predictions. Going back to your original question, I don't know what's coming or going, but I will say, and I will, I'm a diehard, and I will take this to the grave. I do not think that Twitter is going anywhere anytime soon.
oh my gosh.
And I know that is an unpopular opinion.
I actually really agree with you, because I feel like Twitter is like a public service.
Mhm.
Like, and I know it's weird because you look at like the numbers Twitter has compared to the other networks, but you see things on Twitter and then it goes to Reddit and then it goes to 4chan and then it goes to Facebook. Like Twitter is the fire hose of the internet. I'm sure somebody said it before I did. And it's like, and you can just take a little, like you can put your little cup out and kind of take a little bit of it and sample it, or you can just get right in front of it and get blasted off into who knows where. But
it's so true. That's one thing that, at the firm, I'm teaching our staff that you have to be on Twitter and you have to be paying attention. It happens there first. You just said it, right? Our media is on it all day, every day, whether they're, breaking stories or they're getting tips from there. Like, it's happening on Twitter. And I get it that like people don't think it's cool, but quite frankly, I think that people who don't think it's cool, it's because it doesn't serve them. But what it does serve is a critical role in this information pipeline. Mm-hmm. Because you're not on Twitter doesn't mean you're not going to get somehow served the information at some point down the line. But I truly just don't see it going anywhere anytime soon. And I know there's a lot of chatter about, Twitter's on its last legs, but I don't see it happening.
Well, hopefully by the time this episode releases, that's a good prediction and Twitter is still around.
I've also
we're trying to make evergreen content here, so just keep that in mind.
I've also just spent a really long time like growing my Twitter, so I don't want it to go away.
Oh my gosh, yeah, I've heard a good strategy of people will go through scrub all their old tweets because it started out as something totally different back in like 2008 or 2009, and like I you look back at old tweets and it's like, oh, I had this sandwich or something like that, and it's gone so much. I'm tweeting about my social campaign and giving updates on what this show's going to be doing and like setting the strategy and getting feedback. It's just I actually think Twitter is my favorite social network. So
It's mine.
I hope
It's
I hope it
definitely
doesn't
mine.
go away. I wonder if
Um,
it's just is it just like a of our generation kind of thing though.
Yeah, I don't know. I to go back to your earlier point about scrubbing things, I have not scrubbed anything that I've done on the internet. I mean, my old live journals are still out there. I actually spent an entire weekend, I don't know, a couple months ago, like trying to get into one. And I finally did. It took me forever because then I had to like figure out old email addresses and how to get into old email. So it was a whole thing. But I got in and I've never taken any of that down. Unless like things were like wildly grammatically correct or incorrect in a tweet. I don't even delete tweets. I mean, stuff from the early days are still up there. My favorite activity is to, if you search in the Google search, like your handle, and then any sort of term, you can get all of your tweets that ever came up. And I went through a couple years where I like ranted and raved about Panera, and then like suddenly hated Panera. And so there's this like chronological, like over the course of a couple years of me loving them, becoming upset, and then just like really mad about Panera. And it's just very weird but funny that it's still there.
And that's I'm not scrubbing tweets. I like the internet history of it all. I like the chronological order of things, and you watch things transform. And I think that is a good reason to do a podcast because it's a little snapshot in time. And that's kind of why I like doing these shows and interviewing people and talking to interesting people, because I'm taking a snapshot of who they are right now, and we're talking about it. So like if you are at home and you're just kind of going through the internet and you're kind of done working, what else are you doing other than working constantly? Because it sounds like you're working constantly.
So it's not working constantly, although to some people it really seems like it. But if we go back to that whole concept of passion, I mean, for me, it's really hard. Now at the agency, it's easier because when it's time to be done working, I'm all done with my clients for the day. But I'm still doing a ton of reading of automotive related news and catching up on what's happened during the day and what is happening out in the industry as far as supply chain and vehicle reveals and all that kind of stuff. And so I'm still doing a lot of that in the off hours, but that's because it also interests me. Helps me for work, but honestly, I'm also just really interested in it. And then I'm a serial show watcher. I'll literally watch anything. And then I watch all of it.
I can't do that. When
like,
something is
without kidding up.
I can't understand. What shows are you embarrassed that you watched?
So right now I have a running thread on Twitter of everything I've watched in quarantine. And so I try to think, what am I embarrassed that I watched all the way through? I mean,
I hate watched Tiger King. I'll say that.
I mean, I love that. See, I don't think I'm not embarrassed of anything I watched. Like some of it's bad, but I'm glad I watched it. It was super entertaining. I was into Tiger King. Last night I watched the entire Netflix Jeffrey Epstein series. The night before that I watched all of the flower fight, the big flower fight, something like that. It's like Great British Baking, but for like flower sculptures.
Why do you think when you watch something you can't stop watching it? Like why is that personality trait exist in you?
No idea. Honestly, no idea.
Is it I mean, like I think it's part of your perseverance. I really do.
Oh, it is. It is, and I'm really impatient. So I think not knowing the end, I'm just really impatient by it. And so like I'd rather just like, oh, this was a good episode. How many more in the season? Okay, I'll just stay up all night and watch it all. I try to not do that during the week, but I'll be honest, I do it a lot on the weekends.
You're a completionist. Like that, I
And
think that's it, right? Like you
I
have
will
goals, you
watch.
check them off.
Yeah, I mean, I will watch. I feel like in the last year, Netflix has come out with a bunch of original movies, which are basically Hallmark movies, like for teenagers. I don't know, young adult. Definitely not my demographic. I've watched them all. All horrible. The
These are the
one,
truths.
the one was pretty bad, and then like right before quarantine, it like came out with a sequel, and I was like, oh yeah, I gotta watch this right away. And
Oh my gosh.
someone was like, oh, did you enjoy the first one? And I was like, no, not at all. Didn't enjoy it.
Oh my gosh, that's just you. I feel like we're off the rails in the best way because, like, honestly, a lot of these episodes that I've been doing has just been like digging into people's like personality and everything like that, and you refuse to get dug into. You're just like, no, we're talking about Netflix. We're talking.
The other thing, we talk about, going off the rails or like diving in deep to something. I have a problem with Animal Crossing. I don't play video games, but have discovered Animal Crossing. Early, like literally when it first came out, like there's a bunch of people like tweeting about it, and I was like, what is this? And I was like, we have a Switch that no one uses. I was like, I'm gonna get this game. And yeah, totally obsessed with it. I have spent, if you're familiar, the day resets at 5:30 in the morning. I have spent many of all-nighters playing Animal Crossing, and then it gets close enough to 5:30 where I'm like, might as well start the new day over. So just put in a couple more hours and we'll be okay. But yeah, I'm definitely a night owl. I'm not an early morning person. So whether I'm working or whatever, watching TV, I'm definitely up at night doing it.
Like, I mean, like, you obviously, I mean, you have the sensibility to be like, I should probably go to bed, but I'm going to finish this thing, damn it. Like, I'm going to be the best at it. Like, what's motivating you here?
I think a little bit of it is that not like I'm going to be the best, but like I want to have all the information. And that's, when it comes down to like spending all these hours even reading news, like I want to have all the information and I want to be able to make an informed decision. So many, going back to Tiger King, so many people had an opinion about him. And I'm like, but did you watch it? And did you watch the after series special too? Because only then do I feel like you can have a real opinion about him. And so I feel like all this stuff that comes out, I want to have an opinion on it. Then I have to dive into it. And something about pop culture and crappy TV is something I care passionately about.
That is absolutely one thing that I appreciate about your style is everything that you tweet out or say. I don't think you've really led people astray in any meaningful way. And if you have, you've probably owned up to it. You just the genuine, the genuine aspect of when you share information. It's all good stuff. Like it's factual things, and I think that's we need more of that kind of stuff. So when you set out on a new venture, because I assume like, okay, you'll be at this place for I don't know, max 5 years or whatever.
I'm in for the long haul, man. Okay,
I'm sure you're in it for the long haul. But like you are always looking for the next thing. What makes that voice talk inside you that's like, it's time for me to go, or it's time for me to change, or this is the next thing and I have to go full throttle into it?
Well, so I guess I can talk a little bit about, how I see the rest of my career playing out, or at least the grand majority of it. And a lot of, how I see this stage of my career going is purely access, and not access in a way like I want to be able to test drive cars or whatever. Like I want to work on cool things in the automotive industry. And so that's why I feel like being at the agency is the best place to do that, because I can have clients across all different aspects of the industry, and be a part of all their stories. And so one of the things that I haven't mentioned is that, we're the agency of record for the North American International Auto Show. That was the one big thing that drew me in, was being a part of that show. It is one of the largest auto shows. It has a huge, long legacy in Detroit. It was, and I say was, reinventing itself for a summer show that was going to be indoor and outdoor and so extravagant and bigger and better and absolutely amazing until COVID came. And now those plans are put on hold for the foreseeable future. But, I can't wait to be a part of that next year when the show comes back. But that's the type of access that I'm talking about, like being able to be in the room with decision makers, with innovators that are redesigning technology. That's how I want to spend my career.
I think you're doing a good job at that.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, if you haven't gotten the message yet, Katelyn is very real when it comes to being at the very cutting edge of technology and what makes things happen, and has been since as long as I can remember. She was the only other person I knew that had an original Android phone, the what was it, the G1, the T-Mobile G1 here in the States. And yeah, like she has just been on the forefront of this for as long as I can remember. So definitely.
Was it?
Actually, that's the second one. The ones with the slide out keyboard still. Was it that?
What
Oh my
one?
gosh. Yes, there it is. That is the phone I met Katelyn with. Like, so for the audio listeners, she's holding the actual phone, and do you keep these as a keepsake? It's like I came this far.
Okay, so my parents bought a new house, and they're slowly downsizing and moving. And so my dad will randomly find an old cell phone. He's like, "Is this yours?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And he goes, "Do you want it?" Which is such a stupid question. Like, why would I want it? But I keep saying yes. So I have like my first cell phone.
Whoa.
For the kids out there, this is a Virgin Mobile Kyocera, whatever it was called. You could play Snake on it. And then I have like a slew of these Google
early Androids.
Yeah.
You had a Sidekick for a while. I know that.
I was like queen of I have all my sidekicks. That's part of my plan is I have to get them all. I gotta find them all. But here is one of them. I was a hardcore sidekick person. I had all of them at one point. So I had lots of sidekicks. And in between sidekicks, I had Androids, and then I had Androids for a long time before moving to iPhone at like maybe 3 or 4, and I've never looked back.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like cell phones and smartphones, like we're sitting there trying to like bump our way through it, and it's another mature industry now at this point. And I'm kind of like looking around and trying to figure out like where is the next thing, like what are the next industry that we should be getting into as far as people who are really interested in technology. And so that's always a question I'm asking myself. I've been in the automation industry for a long time, and that's always innovating, but it innovates at a slower rate than kind of consumer tech. I think you're in a really cool position, and I can't wait to check back in with you. If we're going to follow you on Twitter,
Yes.
I plugged that at the start of the show. It's Katelyn Shelby. But what else are you working on other than just your personal brand and, every other automotive thing going on in Detroit right now?
Yeah, so outside of automotive, I have started a travel blog. My husband and I were doing a lot of traveling. What the future of that looks like in the near term is up in the air, but I was having fun doing that. We have a drone that we fly when we travel, and so a lot of it was about pictures, but also we travel by creating our own routes and just making things up as we go along. And so a lot of places that we went, I would always have people like, where did you go here? Where did you go there? Can you write down some suggestions? And so the blog started off as just like suggestions in like on a page so I can send them to people. For example, Iceland, every time someone we knew went to Iceland, because we had been there twice and eloped there, we got a lot of questions about Iceland. And so this blog was kind of born out of that. It's outofofficeadventure.com. But yeah, I mean, we were having a lot of fun with that before quarantine. I don't want to create content for content's sake. What we're doing at home is not fun or glamorous by any means. So that's something that I've kind of taken a step back from until we're back out on the road again. But other than that, right now is probably the quietest my life has been in terms of side projects. For the agency, I'm doing a lot of work. I may or may not have a podcast coming out from the agency that will be about mobility and communications. So we'll see. I'm not going to promise anything, but I'm interested in getting back into the podcasting world.
Interesting. Well, if that podcast is out by the time this episode releases, the information will be in the show notes to our dear listeners. So one more kind of Twitter-centric question. Who should we be following right now?
So I do have a list. You can go there. All of the top media that I feel is worthy of following is on there. Outside of that, I don't know. That's a hard one.
I finally got you. Finally. Yeah, that was the last question. I know you have like travel blogs, food stuff. I mean, just local Detroit things. If somebody travels into town, I'm sure you have things. I'm not out here to get you. What's on your mind?
You're out here to get me. I feel like Twitter so far Twitter these days has become so niche. And so it's so hard to shout out a person that someone should follow because everything is so specific at this point. There aren't really like generalists of Twitter.
Yeah.
But the one I will say is I think it's Drink Water Bitch. I follow that one. It reminds me to drink like 12 times a day. I actually have alerts set up for it on my phone.
There you go. That is the hardcore follow that we've been looking for. Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh, Katelyn,
remind you to drink water.
Yes, it's always a good thing. Just drink a little bit of water. Thank you so much for coming on and BSing and letting me pick your brain and seeing how you've been so successful. I just really have so much respect for you. So thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me. It's been fun.
Thank you, and I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Joe Q Car Show. To gain access to our exclusive after show, known as Reaction Time, cleverly named, I know, head over to patreon.com/JoeQCar, and you'll get to hear our behind-the-scenes thoughts, get some follow-up questions, get some tidbits we left out of the show as little extras. And in addition to the Reaction Time after show, you'll also receive a bunch of other benefits. You'll get behind the scenes updates, maybe some stickers, advance notice of who's coming on the show. You could even hang out with me if you're at that tier. There's a bunch of different things. Please go check them out. It's all at patreon.com/JoeQCar. Thank you so much for listening. I can talk all day. So until next time, goodbye for now.
Thank you for tuning in. Let's go. This is the Joe Q Car Show. You know right now I got a full tank. So if you ready, we can hit the road. Ayy. Old school, it's the best. Mixtapes on cassettes. Keep the rims so fresh. Yeah, electric cars, yeah, they the bomb. Racing cars, Formula One, we love it all. So if you love the episode, come back for another one. Yeah.